Introducing Google Cloud Platform. So what makes Google's cloud special? And what differentiates it from all the other clouds out there? Those are the questions we're going to answer in this nugget. And we're going to do so by taking a look underneath Google's cloud to see what powers it all. Let's begin. The magic behind Google Cloud Platform starts with their infrastructure. Google has been building up this incredible infrastructure for a very long time, and they've been doing it from scratch in all forms of infrastructure, hardware, software, network. And they had to, of course, to support all of their products, which have over 1 billion users. I'm talking about things like YouTube and Gmail and Maps and web search, and the list goes on and on. They have been building their own private cloud to support those products for a very long time. And now we have the ability to run our applications at Google speed and Google scale because the Google Cloud Platform sits on top of that same exact infrastructure. It all starts with their hardware infrastructure. A Google data center is a work of science and art rolled into one. These guys are absolutely committed to building these highly efficient, eco-friendly data centers. And hey, that's kind of important, right? We want Earth to be around for a while, so Google is absolutely committed to respecting the ecosystem. These guys are leaders and innovators when it comes to data center efficiency, and they're constantly finding new ways to make a data center more efficient. They find them, they turn them into best practices, and then they share them with the world. And just to give you an example of that, I believe the recommended temperature range for a data center is somewhere between 55 and 65 degrees. Well, years ago, Google said, no, listen, raise your data center temperatures to 80 degrees and then use the natural environment for cooling, things like outside air or water from a nearby water source. Plus, as I mentioned, Google is a huge proponent of using renewable energy, such as wind and solar power. In fact, 35% of the energy used in a Google data center is renewable energy. Isn't that fantastic? In fact, if Mother Nature had a Google account, I'm sure she would +1 that fact. Here's another couple of fun facts for you. A Google data center uses 50% less energy than your typical data center out there. Plus, Google is entirely self-reliant. They custom build everything in these data centers, from the floor to the ceiling to the hardware in between to everything in between, all custom built by Google. Great stuff. Equally as impressive is Google's software infrastructure. Google has had a lot of unique challenges over the years, but one of their first big ones was web search, right? How do you store, index, and make the internet searchable? That is a lot of data. Plus, what about all the other products we're going to build in the future? If we want to support 1 billion+ users, well, we're going to need data center-wide software that can scale efficiently. So once again, Google looked within. They homebrewed many custom data center-wide technologies to support their products and services. And what's really cool about this is eventually they open source many of these technologies, share them with the world, and more products are born from these incredible technologies. The last piece of the infrastructure puzzle is Google's network infrastructure. So we have these highly efficient data centers. These technological marvels are all over the globe. How is Google going to tie them together? Well, they're going to connect them with fiber optics. And it doesn't matter that there's an ocean between these data centers because they'll just lay cables on the seafloor. Why not, right? And that's what they did, forming the most impressive planet-wide private network there is. On top of that, they have edge pops, points of presence around the perimeter of their network to get those requests on to their private network as fast as possible because, again, this is an incredibly fast private network. So the quicker they can get those requests on, the quicker they can get those results back to the user. Plus, they have an edge caching layer on top of their network infrastructure. Google has great relationships with all the major ISPs out there, which allow them to siphon off network traffic and reserve up static content without it having to get regenerated from their servers. And this is going to result in a much better and faster end user experience. So I think it's safe to say that Google has infrastructure covered from all angles, and now we have the opportunity to run our own solutions on this exact same infrastructure, the same infrastructure that powers some of the biggest products on the planet. Let's finish up by talking about regions and zones. These are important concepts in Google's cloud because whenever we create a resource, and a resource could be anything from a virtual machine to a cloud storage bucket, we need to determine where it's going to live. And you're going to want to place your resources nearest to the users. So think of a region as a geographical location or a data center complex, right? And right now we've got 4 big Google Cloud Platform regions. We have Central US, which is actually located in Iowa. We have Eastern US, which is located in South Carolina. We have Western Europe, which is located in Belgium. And we have Eastern Asia, which is located in Taiwan. Now think of a zone as roughly equivalent to a data center within that region. So let's take our Western European example here. And let's say that we were spinning up a virtual machine and we wanted to put it somewhere inside of the Western European region because that's where all of our users are going to be, or at least a good majority of them. So we would spin up that virtual machine, and then it would ask us, hey, provide a zone. Where do you want this to live? We would need to choose one of these 3 zones. And it uses the naming convention here, region dash zone. So Europe dash West 1 is the region, B is the zone, dash being the separator between those two. Now you can design some pretty resilient and highly available applications by spreading your resources across zones within a region. And you can even take that to the next level by spreading your resources across regions. Now let me just illustrate that with a really quick example, just to show you the power of the platform. And I gotta say, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many cool things we can do in Google's cloud, and a lot of it because of that planet-wide infrastructure they have in place. So let's say we have an application, and it has a global user base. So we spin up that application over here, maybe in this zone, we spin it up in this zone, and then we spin it up in multiple zones in other regions, right? So now we've got our application running all over the place. So right now what'll happen is our users will get served by the data center closest to them, right? So it looks something like this. And let's say we use, and I'm just going to use Compute Engine's HTTP load balancing feature, which we'll talk more about when we get into Compute Engine, but it's just an incredible feature, super easy to work with. But we put the HTTP load balancer on top of our application, right? That's going to connect all these together. So what will happen now is if a data center goes down, no problem. It'll just get routed to another data center within that region. We're protected because we spread our application, our resources across multiple zones within that region. But let's say an entire region went down, which, by the way, highly unlikely scenario, but for the sake of this example, let's say that it did. Our users wouldn't have a clue that it happened. Maybe on the very first request, it may take a couple of milliseconds longer, but those users would just get rerouted to the next nearest data center and get served up from that application. So that's regions and zones in a nutshell. We'll be working with them quite heavily as we get deeper into the course. In the CBC Nugget, we took an introduction to Google Cloud Platform and saw that it sits on top of this incredible planet-wide infrastructure that Google has been building up for many years that hosts all of their internal products. It's now available to us. We can put our own solutions on that incredible infrastructure and profit. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.